Active wheat sourdough starter, 100% hydration. I fed it literally 3 hours ago, and now it's ready for baking. It's tripled in size and is at its peak. I've selected the starter. I add room temperature water. I dissolve the starter in the water. I add sifted flour. I use white flour. I knead the dough until all the flour is moistened. Usually, when making tartine bread, I do 3 or 4 folds. After folding, it ferments for another hour and a half to 2 hours at room temperature. Today we'll do just 2 folds of the dough and immediately put it in the refrigerator for cold fermentation. Next, I add olive oil and a little honey. All the ingredients and their quantities will be listed in the description below the video. I also immediately add salt and now thoroughly knead the dough. We need the salt, honey, and oil to be evenly distributed throughout the dough. This takes about 3-4 minutes. As you can see, I knead the dough in a bowl. It's very convenient, and this recipe will reduce the time to about 2 hours from 12. Such a quick tartine. And finally, see if this recipe for healthy and quick bread suits you. I gather the dough, cover it, and leave it at room temperature for half an hour. Half an hour has passed. I make the first fold of the dough. I stretch the dough out and fold it into the center. I repeat this in a circle several times until the dough becomes more elastic. If the dough sticks, lightly moisten your hands with water. This will make it easier to work with. Next, I gather the dough into a ball, cover it again, and leave it for another 30 minutes at room temperature. Second fold. Air bubbles have already appeared in the dough. The sourdough is working. I lightly moisten my hands with water. I separate the dough from the sides of the bowl. I stretch the dough out again and fold it. I repeat this in a circle until the dough becomes more elastic. Then I gather the dough into a ball again and cover it. This was our final folding. I let the dough rest for another 30 minutes. If you're having trouble, ask in the comments. The dough is rising well, which is clearly visible. I lightly dust the dough surface and the countertop with flour. Transfer the dough to the countertop and pre-shape the loaf. I stretch the dough slightly and fold it, just as you see in the video. These movements stretch the dough structure and the air bubbles are evenly distributed within. Then I roll the dough into a roll, keeping it slightly taut. I flip it over and roll it again, further strengthening the gluten. I lightly dust the dough with flour again and gather the dough into a hat using gentle circular motions. Cover and let the dough rest for 15-20 minutes at room temperature. Meanwhile, I dust a bread basket with flour. I almost always use the same flour I use to make my bread. If you don't have a bread basket, it's not a problem at all. Take, for example, a bowl like this one, plastic or ceramic, any kind. Just don't make it too wide, or the bread will spread. The narrower the pan, the less the bread will spread. I turn the dough over and shape it into a loaf. I fold one side of the dough, take one edge from the side, fold it over, and fold it over the other side. Twist it with a little tension. I turn the dough over and pinch the edges. I place the dough in a bread basket for proofing. I sprinkle a little flour on top of the dough and cover it with a plastic bag. I secure the bag with a rubber band so that the dough doesn't dry out in the refrigerator. Then I immediately put the dough in the refrigerator for cold proofing for 12-14 hours without warm fermentation at room temperature. Adjust the time to suit your schedule, but I recommend keeping it in the refrigerator for at least 8 hours. And this is the second loaf, which I made at the same time, but I didn't show that dough. Everything is exactly the same as with the first loaf. I transferred it to a proofing basket, sprinkled it with flour, covered it with a plastic bag, and placed it in the refrigerator for cold fermentation. As a reminder, I'll be baking this bread on a baking sheet, while the first loaf will be baked in a cauldron. We'll compare the crusts of the bread with and without the cauldron. 14 hours have passed. I took the dough out of the refrigerator. My refrigerator temperature is 5 degrees Celsius. I lightly dust the dough with flour and transfer it to a parchment-lined baking sheet. I dust it lightly with flour again. This will make it easier to apply the design. I'm going to make a light design on this bread. Using a rope like this, I'll punch stripes in the dough as a guide for the design and make slits with a blade. Then I make the main slit in the center of the bread and place it in a preheated oven. I bake with steam for the first 15 minutes. As a reminder, all the ingredients, as well as the baking temperature, are in the description below the video. So I take out the second loaf. It's also been refrigerated for 14 hours. The temperature is 5 degrees Celsius. I transfer it to a baking sheet. I take out the cauldron, which is already preheated to 250 degrees Celsius. I make a slit across the bread surface. I transfer the dough into the cauldron, cover with a lid, and place it in the preheated oven. Bake for 20 minutes, remove the lid, lower the temperature, and bake for another 15-20 minutes until golden brown. I take the fragrant bread out of the oven and let it cool. And look at that crust. It's all bubbles and so thin, more tender. Let me remind you, this bread is double folded and without any warm imagination. A quick option. A dull, wonderful sound means the bread is perfectly baked. The bread turned out crispy, aromatic, with a thin crust, and very healthy. And here's the second example. Without the cauldron, baked on a regular baking sheet. The crust is also very crispy, a little rougher, but still quite good. Otherwise, it's a great option. It's up to you to decide what's more important to you. In a cauldron, we get a thinner, more delicate crust. Without a cauldron, it's a little rougher. That's the only difference. But if the crust is too rough for you, you can cover the bread with a towel for about 30 minutes after baking. It will soften a little. Look how smooth the crumb is. And